Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails. One last time. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love.
Father, thank you so much for being here. Father, we worship you and we lift your name up. Father, as we go into a time of just hearing what you have to say to us, God, let our hearts and our ears be open to you. In your name we pray. Amen. You guys are good to take a seat.
All right, guys, welcome. Happy Sunday. So, announcements for this upcoming week. And so, first thing, we need to take care of order of business. It's like we need to make a student record. So, every person in your small groups, you're not just fill one out. It's like your phone number, your email, it's like your name, your grades, things like that, simple stuff. So yeah, during your small group, you're gonna have and then also, upcoming is a very important holiday for people going to church especially. It's called Easter, which, if you don't know, is like when Jesus was resurrected. And so to celebrate that day, we're going to have an Easter celebration. Date is probably going to be like on or around Easter, and flowers are going to be coming soon. So just let your parents know, let your friends know, and look forward to that. Also, more of a recent thing is the Valentine's Day banquet is this Friday. Yeah, dress like we semi-formal, which for girls is like a dress, obviously, and then for guys is like a button-up and like some khakis or some nice flags. So, yes. Invite your friends for food, games, and community. It's a 3-for-1. Alright. Let us dive into the word. Today we're going to have 2 verses, which is, they're both in 1 John. 1 John chapter 4, verses 7 through 12, then 17 through 21. 1 John chapter 4. Let us read. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. Whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love. In this love, God was made manifest among us, that God sent his only Son into the world, so that we might live through him. In this love, not that we might have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son down to be propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. Now for 17 through 21. By this love perfected with us, so that we may have confidence for the day of judgment. Because as he is also, we are in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears this has not been perfected with love. We love because he first loved us. If anyone says, I love God, and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother, whom he has seen, cannot love God, whom he has not seen. And this commandment we have from him: whoever loves God must also love his brother. Amen. Okay, let us pray for the sermon and everybody's reading. Dear God, just truly let this sermon, Lord, that everybody here just soak into our hearts, Lord, and just, as the pastor said, Lord, let us truly love each and every person, Lord, and we truly are one body in God. You still pray? Amen.
Alright guys, welcome again. I'm really glad to see you guys here. I hope you guys were okay yesterday. I know the weather was kind of random, but everybody have fun? Okay. Did you guys try to make snowmen? Okay. It didn't last long because the weather wasn't that cold, but hopefully you had a little bit of fun. Yeah, so we're talking about this thing about who God is, love of God. Now, you guys probably have seen it played out now in school, but maybe you're the person. Have you ever seen 2 like teenage couples who are dating, but they're just so in love with each other? Okay, you know what I mean? Between every class, they're just embracing each other, just leaning on each other, just like it looks like she's sending the guy off to war. Like she's never gonna see him again. She's just so somber, and they're just like caressing each other's hair. And you're just like looking into each other's eyes. It's just like deep, burning passion. And then the bell rings, and they go to third period. And then third period ends, and then it's fourth period. And they do it again. It's like, oh, I missed you so much. How was third period? Can't wait till lunch. Ring. Okay, I'll see you next period. And then to keep doing that, first thought I had was, that's exhausting. Okay, to be that affectionate, that frequent, that many days a week, it's exhausting, right? But I'm watching it play it out. I remember even a girl when I was in high school, she lost a special ring that her boyfriend had given her. And she got permission from the school to put up like dozens of flyers throughout the school saying there's a reward because it's a very special ring. Now, I don't want to laugh. Maybe it was like some generational ring that her grandmother gave her or something. I don't know. But they were that couple in our school. And every period between the classes, I was like, oh, give it a break, okay? This is making me sick, okay? I know that you guys like each other, but you guys have to kind of chill out on that. Because who here has seen that before? Okay? Who here does it? Who's the guy or girl that does it? Like, you act like you haven't seen each other in 10 years, and you guys just came out of some seriously devastating situation in your life, and when you see her, it's like, oh my gosh, how you been? Second period was just flirting. Who does that? Raise your hand. Start calling people out. Anyone here? Okay, if you do that, I'm not. I guess you should reconsider. But the reason I bring it up is because in relationships, that is. Can you cut down the echo here? In the relationships, that is a big part of the initial stages of the relationship, right? Like when you're dating someone, the first initial attraction is what you see, right? And that's okay. I think that when you're first dating, everything is just like so awesome. You're like butterflies in your stomach. It's like you're like a little schoolgirl. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I found this person in my life. It's just so awesome. They complete each other. Like they know me. We connect. And we read each other's minds, and we complete each other's sentences before it's even said. It's just so special. Okay, that goes on for a few months, and then, oh God, this person, this bad habit, blah, 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 blah. And then eventually you're like, I can't stand with this person anymore, okay? She thinks she's cute, but I can't hang with her anymore, right? And then vice versa, the guy's like, oh. So that happens. So I think initially, it's okay to have these emotional affections, right? But that doesn't sustain a relationship. Just look at your parents. How many times do you see your dad like coming home like, honey, I brought you flowers? I guarantee you they did that when they were dating, right? They like show up at school and they're like throwing rocks at the window. Honey, I brought you flowers, and your mom was like, oh, you're the best man in the world. Like 10 years later, it's like they haven't bought flowers ever before. And when he does make flowers, your mom's like, you spent money on this? Right? How much does it cost? That's the first thing they say. So the emotions eventually go away. You have to have something deeper to sustain the relationship. And you know what that is? It's commitment. I think there's a level of commitment that has to be there for the relationship to go on. Because it's just like when you buy something new. The first day you get it, it's awesome. You're smelling it, you're enjoying it, you're putting it on Facebook or whatever social media guys use nowadays. You're like, oh, everyone, look what I have. It's just so amazing. A year later, are you doing the same thing? A year later, you're already Googling, like 2 months later, you're already Googling, what new thing can I get to replace this old thing? And that's just the way it is in relationships, isn't it? At first, even when we become a Christian and we come to Christ, and we have this relationship with Jesus, it feels amazing. It's like, Jesus, you saved me from sin. And it's like, I'm floating. I'm just so like, I'm on cloud nine. I can't be touched. And then like a month passes by, and then something bad happens in your life. Like, God, where were you? And then those feelings go away, and you have to have something else that's going to sustain your relationship with God. This is what the love of God is. And before we start, I want us to start off with this thought. Loved people loved others. Loved people loved others. Now, raise your hand in here if I asked you, are you Christian? Very simple, right? If I asked you, if anyone in this world asked you, are you Christian? Raise your hand if you would say yes. Just so I'm curious. Okay? All right? You can put your hands down. So that applies to you then. If any of you raise your hand and say, yes, I'm a Christian. If you haven't, hey, I'm excited that you're here, and I want to continue to have a conversation with you because this is really important for us to understand, and salvation is the most important decision you can make. But for those who raise your hands, this applies to you. And John is saying, look, you have received the love of God. If you raise your hand and said, I'm a Christian, you've received the love of God. Therefore, loved people, which is you, love others. That's what John is going to say. But here's the thing. The love that you're supposed to show is not something that you muster up from deep within your soul. It's not. You simply demonstrate what has been demonstrated to you. In other words, you mimic. What does it mean to mimic? You just follow what the other person does. So as you guys know, I have 3 kids. My oldest is 5. And one day I noticed he was saying this one word really frequently. It's, okay? I was, hey, Daniel, let's go eat dinner. Let me put this away, okay? Hey, Daniel, let's go brush your teeth. Okay, let me do this first, okay? Hey, Daniel, let's go eat lunch. Let me bring this thing with me, okay? I was like, man, where did you get this from? It sounds kind of harsh. He's not being mean, but it sounds kind of harsh. What, like YouTube? I don't know, where do you get it from? One day, it just clicked. I say it all the time. It's like, Dad, can we have orange juice? Let's eat first and we can have oranges, okay? Hey, Dad, can we go to the park? Yeah, let's clean up this stuff and we'll go out, okay? And I say it all the time. It's just one day I said it and clicked. I was like, oh my gosh, it's me. It's not anyone else. I taught him, it's me. I am the person that he interacts with the most in his life right now, right? I mean, until you turn about 6 or 7 years old, your mom and or dad is the person that you interact with the most. Everything you know about life comes from them. Everything you know about life comes from them. And so all your habits, all your traditions, even your language, the way you talk, comes from your parents. And so I realized he's just mimicking what he sees me doing. And see, that's what we have to understand about the love of God. We're not mustering up the strength from within. You don't have to go out there and create something new. When this thing says love God, love people, love God, you're like, oh, let's go to the lab and figure out what this looks like. No, you're just mimicking what God has displayed towards you. Now, this whole thing happens to people who know God and are born of God. Again, if you raise your hand, when I said, are you a Christian, you raise your hand, this applies to you. That means at some point in your life, you made that commitment. God, I want to know you, and he came and he gave you forgiveness of sins, and he gave you life in heaven. That means you know God and you were born of God. Do you remember that? You know that phrase, born again? It was a huge thing in the 90s. It's like, hey, what religion do you adhere to? I'm a born-again Christian. It's not just Christian, right? Nowadays, I'm a Christian, or I go to church. Back then, if you're a Christian, the right answer was, I'm a Christian. That's the wrong answer. You're a born-again Christian. And so everyone has to say, I'm a born-again Christian. I'm a born-again Christian. Eventually, it just became like a reason to make fun of Christians. It's like, are you born-again Christian too? And so that like lost its meaning. Well, it's actually really significant what that means. Remember when Jesus was approached by one of the religious leaders? He said, Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And what did Jesus say? You must be born again. But you know what? It was a very new concept. You know how I know? The person who heard it, he took it literally. Like it wasn't something that he had never heard. He hadn't ever had time to process it. So when Jesus said, you must be born again, he said, I'm a 45-year-old man. I can't go back into my mom's womb. And that's how he took it. He took it as a literal statement. Now, was Jesus saying that? Absolutely not. He was saying this. Look, to be born again means you die to yourself and the sin, and then you come to life in Jesus and in forgiveness. And so you become a new person. And so Jesus is saying, look, if you raise your hand just a minute ago, if I said, hey, are you a Christian? That means at some point in your life, you made a commitment to know God and to be loved by God. And so what's John going to say? Okay, so imagine I'm John, and he says, okay, for those of you who raise your hand, that means you know God and are born of God. Okay, that's a fair assumption. Now, the assumption after that is, then you must love others. Then you must love others. And then he's going to say something that's going to be really offensive to people, even in this room. Well, if that's true, if you're a Christian and you're supposed to love others, then he's going to say, the opposite is true too. If you don't love others, you're not a Christian. Ooh, offensive, right? Who here got offended? Hey, I'm just repeating what my man John said, okay? Don't get mad at me. I'm just a messenger. John is saying, look, if you don't love others, maybe you're not a Christian. Now, I don't think he's doing it to anger people or offend people. It's more like this. So, have you ever had someone ask you, hey, what does this word mean? And you had no idea what it meant. Well, you're too proud for that. So you're like, oh, well, what that word means is, it's like, you know, when that, you know what I'm saying? And you're like, no. In fact, you need to find the word for me. In fact, I don't think you know what that word means. Now, you might have a sense of what that word means, right? You've heard it before, you've heard it in context, and you have an idea of what it means, but you're not entirely sure what it means. So, after I explain it to you, after you Google it a little bit more, after you hear it more used in different contexts, then you have a better idea what it means. So what's the point? You don't know what it means initially, but after it's explained to you a little bit more and you see it being used, then you're thinking, oh, now I know what this word means. See, I think that's what it is about being born again in Christ. Oftentimes, we really don't know what it means to be born again, to know God, to love God, to be loved by God. We have an idea, but it's not that clear in our heads. It's just an idea. Look up. That's why Jesus says you have to be born again, because you have to be renewed in your understanding. And so who here gets offended when John says this? Say, look, if you don't love others, then you're not a Christian. That's what he's saying. John is not mincing words. Okay, this is not a PC society, politically correct society where he's trying to be nice about what he's saying. He's not saying it in a gentle way. He's just like saying it straight. You're a Christian, then you're supposed to love people. You don't love people, then you're not a Christian. But he's not saying it in a way to say, get out of here, you're hopeless. He's saying, look, you have to get to a point where you understand it more, because those who are saved and born again loved others. Remember, loved people love others. Love people love others. So it's pretty simple on surface, right? If you're a Christian, again, raise your hand if you're a Christian. If anyone in this board ever said, are you a Christian? Okay, so if you raise your hand, then you should love others. You should love others. But if you don't, John is saying, you should put your hand back down. Because according to what Jesus lived, you're not a Christian. But don't leave yet. I can guide you. This is what John said. I can guide you to the path to being a Christian. Don't leave yet. It's not like you're hopeless. Just don't leave yet. You just don't get it yet. You just don't understand what that word means yet. You can't explain it yet. You have an idea, but you can't explain it yet. Okay, so you're like, okay, fine. What is the manner of love? What are we supposed to love with, right? Well, it's based on a man. The love that we show is based on a man. And you know who that man is? It's not John. It's Jesus. Jesus came. God came in the form of man to this earth. He took upon all the punishment that belonged to you and me. And when he did that, in return, he gave those who received Jesus eternal life. Forgiveness of sin, eternal life in heaven. That's what Jesus does. You're like, oh, that's so simple. It's actually very complicated. The statement is simple. Understanding of it is very complicated. So I'm going to go over 3 things John is going to show about the love of God. And this is the kind of love we're supposed to show. Now, you might be thinking, yeah, I love people. Okay, here's a big question. Does the other person receive it as love? Isn't that pretty critical? If you go around saying, I'm a nice person, I think I'm a pretty nice person. Okay, I'd be like, okay, do other people think that too? Like, do the people on the receiving end, would they agree? So, if you say, yeah, I love people, then let's put it against the test of Jesus Christ and his life and his death and his resurrection. And if it's not consistent, John is saying, look, maybe you're not a Christian yet, but it's okay. Don't leave. Don't walk out of the temple. Just here, let me explain more of it, and then you can really understand it. Well, the first is, love is selfless. Love is selfless. Love is selfless. What does it mean to be selfless? It just means you're more concerned about the well-being of others. Now, hear me correctly. It doesn't say don't care about yourself. It just says you're more concerned about the well-being of others. Have you guys ever had this conversation? You get motivated to be nice one day, and you go around and say, hey, how you doing, man? And he's like, oh, man, I'm having a terrible time in my life. Oh, man, I'll pray for you, man. Good luck with that. Just walk away. That's pretty selfish, right? What am I thinking in my head? oh my gosh, he's really going to start pouring out his life and stuff into me right now. I really don't have the time. I'm not that interested. It's going to take too much emotional energy out of me. So instead of me saying, all right, let me sit down. Tell me about it. I'm going to be selfish and say, you know what? Good luck with that, man. Go find your small group leader. Hopefully they can help you with it. That's selfish. But what about if it was selfless? And we say, hey, man, I'm sorry to hear that. Let me sit down and tell me all about it. See, Jesus does that too. There are people that Jesus talked to that no Jewish person should ever go near. Remember, if you're sick, if you have leprosy, the law says to the Jew, don't even go near the person. Send them away out of the city for a week, because if you touch him, you have to go to this out of the city for a week and go through this incredibly ridiculous, purity right thing, and you're just like, don't mess with it. Just send them out of the way. It's more convenient for you. Be selfish. Jesus says, no. I'm going to show you how to live. It's selfless. So what does he do? He goes and interacts with people who have leprosy, who can't walk, who are blind, who are widows, who are prostitutes, who are poor, people who have no influence in society, people who are not popular. Jesus says, look, I'm going to show you what selfless life looks like. And we are the people that Jesus had no business interacting with. He displayed selfless life. That's one thing. Love is selfless. I think love is also sacrificial. Have you guys ever given something, maybe even to like Goodwill, and people were like, yeah, man, that's awesome. I can't believe you gave. And what do you say? Whatever, I wasn't even using it. I'm like, okay, cool. We should give, but don't tell people that you're this sacrificial person. You ever hear that? It's like, yeah, I gave to offering. Whatever, I made a lot of money this year, so it's not a big deal. Okay, I'm really thankful that you gave, but don't go around telling people you're sacrificial. If you don't miss it, it's not sacrificial. I mean, you should still give, but don't go around thinking, I'm such a sacrificial Christian. I just made that up, by the way. You're not. You're giving Christian, but you're not sacrificial. To be sacrificial, what? It has to cost you something, right? It has to cost you something. How do I know that? It cost Jesus something. Jesus, like, oh, he's Jesus, Son of God. He didn't care about his life. What are you talking about? He's a man. He's a human being. Every human being cares about their life. Every human being, values their life. How come you think no one wants to die? You're like, oh, I thought I was going to die. Why? Because you value your life. It's precious. Jesus valued his life, but what did he do? He gave it up. He gave it up to people who have no business receiving that sacrifice. To us. So he was not only selfless, he was sacrificial. You ever go to Shake Shack? Anyone here Shake Shack? Okay? So it's like a New York chain. I don't know if they have it here. I think they have one in Midtown somewhere. So I went to New York. I visited some people. I went to New York. They're like, oh, you gotta have Shake Shack. I was like, okay, chill, let's go. So we went. He brings me this burger. You know what it looks like? Exactly like McDonald's hamburger. Like the cheeseburger that you get at the Dollar Menu. Exactly the same size. Little less grease, or a little more grease than a McDonald's version has. It's like, you brought me here for this? You brought me here for this. I was like, all right. Ate it. It was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't the best burger I ever had. I ate it. And then I went back and I saw the menu. $8 for this? A la carte. You know what a la carte means? Burger and drink is not included. You have to order everything separately. So the burger and fries included was like $12 for this thing. I said, my man, we could get this at McDonald's for $3. $1 drink, $1 fry, $1 burger. You paid $8 for this? Now, I didn't enjoy it more, but you know what? My gratitude changed. I was like, hey, man, thank you. Thank you for spending $8 on this burger. Inside, I was thinking, don't do that. It's not a good value. But I was thinking, I am so thankful. See, what about us? If we understood that it cost Jesus something, would it change the way you view salvation? Would it change the way you view salvation if you realize it cost Jesus something? It cost him his life. See, being loving is sacrificial. So keep this in mind. If you're a Christian, and if you raise your hand, your love should be selfless, it should be sacrificial, and the third thing, last thing, love is proactive, not reactive. You know what that means? Someone who's proactive means they create the opportunity themselves. Someone who's reactive, they just wait, and then they react to the situation. Somebody who loves proactively. You create opportunities. Okay, so we have visitors almost every week here. Okay? Who here runs to the visitor? It's like, hey, man, it's good to have you here. What's up? You're a visitor. Nice to see you, man. Hey, where are you from? What school are you going to? Yeah? I go to that school too. Awesome. Who does that? Who here does that? What's the easier thing to do? Kidney person. Right, because it's scary. It's scary. What if they don't like me? What if they're not nice? What if they make me feel stupid for walking over here? It's so much easier when we see a newcomer to just ignore it and think, well, my small group leader, they're an adult, they'll take care of it. Love is proactive. It creates opportunities to serve. It creates opportunities to love. It creates opportunities to be influential. Being influential is not something you wait for it to happen. It's something that we intentionally create. Is this changing the way you view your love? Is your love selfless? Is it sacrificial? Is it proactive? Now, John is going to say, this is like perfected love. It's not saying that when you start loving like this, you become perfect. John is saying this. Look, let's try the best that we can in this life to express Jesus' love in the most perfect way possible. Now, I'm going to tell you this so you don't go out there and think that it's going to be perfect in the way you express it. We will fail in loving like Christ did. We just will. Because we're human beings. And I think that's okay. And what I mean by that is God recognizes that we are weak. That's why he's strong. So he's not saying you will be perfect. He's just saying, hey, let's try to love in the most perfect way possible. So this is the kind of love that we mimic, guys. Okay, again, let me see a hand if you're a Christian. Raise your hand. Awesome. Is your love selfless, sacrificial, and proactive? Is your love selfless, proactive, and sacrificial? Is this how you love others? Or is it something else, selfish? Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make them feel really, really stupid because then it makes me feel really powerful. So we start to exclude people, or we start to make fun of people, or we start to gossip about people. Why? Because it makes us feel good. That's selfish love. That's not selfless. Loving, not sacrificially. It never costs us anything. And I'm not just talking about money, guys. It costs something for us to walk across the room to that newcomer because that newcomer may not be that friendly. But it's going to cost you your security and your comfort. Because when you see a newcomer, it's so much easier to just like, hey, let's get in a little buddy circle and just be friends. And yeah, we're having so much fun. And the whole time it's like, well, how are you going to love sacrificially, proactively, if you're always in your circle and you're always in your comfort zone, if you're always in a place that makes you feel secure? What if you were able to walk out of that comfort zone and love in a way that Jesus loved you? But here's the other reason we can love, guys. There is no fear in love. There's no fear in love. Those who have been loved will no longer display fear. Those who have been loved by Jesus in a selfless, sacrificial, and proactive way will no longer experience the crippling effects of fear. It just doesn't. And now what I mean by that is it's our value, understanding who we are before Jesus. Anyone here for a show? It's not that popular, but it's called Antique Roadshow. You hear about it? So what the show is, it's like on PBS, so yeah, download you guys can watch it. It's still going on, and don't you laugh, young man, it's a good show. So they have these auctioneers, people who have been who work at auction places all their life. So they kind of have an eye and an understanding of what things cost and what people are willing to pay for it. So people bring like junk from their attic. They go, I don't know, this painting looks valuable. Can you tell me how much people will pay? And sometimes it's worth nothing. Sometimes it's worth a lot. Now, recently there was a man who is a retired Air Force veteran, and when he was stationed in Japan back in 1974, he bought a Rolex. Anyone here know what a Rolex is? It's a really expensive brand out of Switzerland, and he bought this Rolex for $345. That's really cheap, okay, compared to what it costs now. So he bought it for $345, and then when he got it, he bought it because he likes diving, right, going to the ocean and going under the water and all that stuff. But then he said, this watch is too nice to take in the seawater. So you know what he did with it? Never wore it. He just put it into a safety deposit box. So if you go to any bank, they have these things called safety deposit boxes. It's behind a humongous safe. It's just a little box. You pay like $60 a year, and it'll be secure because it's in the bank. He put it there for over 40 years. He had all the receipts, all the documents, he had all the paperwork, the original boxes, everything. So the auctioneer, he looks at it and says, you know what, this particular brand of watch, this model, was very famous. Because a very famous model or actor wore it in one of his movies in the 70s, so everybody wants it. So this watch is worth something like $300,000 and $400,000, okay? That guy's like, oh my gosh, I paid $345, now it's potentially worth $400,000. But he says, look, I have even better news, because you have never worn it, you have all the paperwork. This watch at an auction could fetch $500,000 to $700,000. And I was thinking, that's awesome. Hope it's in a good source of retirement for him. But is that how we view our relationship with God? Our value before God. If I do enough, God, then I am valuable to God. If I don't do enough before God, then I'm not valuable to God. And so I'm going to create more value. I'm going to make myself more valuable. So I'm going to do more things. I'm going to serve more. I'm going to read the Bible more. I'm going to pray more. And then God will love me more. But what about this? What if God loves you anyways, guys? Just listen. Just listen to what I'm saying. You don't have to believe me, but just listen. Look up for a second. What if God loves you simply because he made you? And that's it. What if God loved you simply because he made you? There are times when my kids drive me crazy, and I run away and hide in my garage. My garage is my safety zone. Like, I hide there, because sometimes they drive me crazy. And sometimes they're just not that lovely. Is my wife in here? Hey, baby, you in here? Okay. So when Daniel, Nora, and Emma does something that is not pleasant, you know what my first thought is? My gosh, you're just like your mother. I know. But, she says that too, so don't believe me. That's just what spouses do. And then when you're mad, when they do something good, you're like, oh man, just like daddy, I like that. But when they do something bad, it's like, man, you're just like your mom, right? What if, in that situation, I still love them? Yeah, they make me mad, but I still love them. Why? Because I made them. At the end of the day, I created them. I gave them birth, and my wife did the work, but I was part of the process. I was there. So we gave them life. And I still created them. And see, this is what you guys have to understand. God loves you regardless of what you do or don't do. God loves you regardless of what you do or don't do. This is why his love is amazing grace. Now, if we understood that, if we truly knew our value, then we wouldn't be afraid to walk across the room and fear rejection. Because no amount of rejection is going to change our value. If we understood that we are valuable in God's eyes, we could be sacrificial, because we don't have to hold on to all these worldly things to give us security. Because all the security that we ever need is found in our relationship with Jesus. Are you starting to get the picture? There is no fear in love. Does it free you? Does it free you to be able to love like this? Now, I'm going to say something just as offensive as John, only because I care about you. Really, please, take it humbly, or take it from me, because I want to say it humbly. John is saying, look, you're a Christian, great. Do you love others selflessly, sacrificially, and proactively? If the answer is no, then John, like me, is saying, maybe you're not yet. Maybe you're not yet. And there's no reason to continue to fool yourself into it. How about we continue to humble ourselves before Christ and ask God, hey, can you give me a greater understanding what this love is? Because after all, if we're not mimicking Jesus, then maybe we're not following Jesus. Let's pray. Father, I pray right now as we go into our small group, if anyone here was offended by me, please receive my apology. Because it was not my intention, but Lord, just like your apostle John, or your servant John wrote, and I'm relaying, if we don't love like Jesus loves, if we're not displaying and mimicking the love that Jesus showed us, then maybe we don't really understand Jesus' love yet. But it's not too late. It's not a lost cause. Lord, we simply just need to dig deeper in our relationship with you and help us understand. And I pray that you're going to mold us into the image of Jesus, that we can live a life not selflessly or selfishly, but selflessly, God, because that's the life that you led in this earth. Father, I pray that you would bless our time and really lead our discussion today and our week. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, guys.